Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. First of all, my thanks to the organizers here who have every year welcomed me with a loving heart to address to the students here as well as the inmates. The last 2 years I have come, this is the third year consecutively, and different subjects. So this year the topic is Message of the Upanishads. I'm sure many of you have been studying the most important philosophical section of the Vedas known as Upanishads. The acme of thinking. The human mind has always been a curious mind. A mind that wants answers for things that it cannot understand by just looking at it. It always wants to know the cause of everything. And Swami Ishwarananda, who is the Guru Bhai of Vishnu Devananda, he always said that cause and link is the nature of the intellect of a human. It looks for reasoning, looks for connection between what we see and what we don't see. The relationship between effect and the cause. And that's how all the science has developed. The very nature of science is to look for the cause for everything. And if there is a problem, we would like to resolve it, not temporarily or temporarily, not symptomatically, but going to the cause and eliminating the cause. So the human mind always wondered, are we born to be unhappy? Are we born to die? Are we born to perish? Are we born to suffer? Are we born to be in bondage? And these great masters of the East, when they started to think about it, as Swami Ishwarananda used to say, these great masters had a lot of time in their hand, unlike us. And today's world, we are, in spite of all the technological development and all the facilities that we have, we still tell people, I don't have time. They did not have that many demands from the world. They lived in simplicity. They lived with what is available to them. And they also were close to the nature. The nature gave them plenty. Rains in the right time, yieldings of all the cultivation, the fruits and the roots and the vegetables. And they had less things to worry about. And therefore, they had more time to contemplate. to think deeply about these subject matters. So Upanishads basically is about quest for happiness. It's not about a particular form of God or ideas and philosophies about ideologies about God. It's more about why am I here? What am I doing? What's my happiness? Why I am not happy right now if I know what is happiness and why it is not there right now, etc. So the quest is beginning with the seeker. The difference between one who's searching and one who's seeking is this. The spiritual life begins with the search for happiness. Not long life, not heavens, not even God. Because the whole idea of God, according to most religion, is an embodiment of joy, bliss, powerful, happy, liberated, all controlling, etc. So the human mind sought after this. I don't want God, but I don't want to look for God. I want to become one. I can be as powerful as the Lord, as happy as so-called the happiness of God. So the seeking for happiness, search for happiness, is the beginning point of human thinking. I want to find out what can take me to the eternal joy, permanent one, everlasting one. So seeking is after knowing where to look for everlasting happiness. First you search, and when you know where it is, you started seeking it. It's like when you lost a key to your car, when you came out of the home and you lost the key, you forgot to pick up the key from your home. I didn't have the key. So you go back home, open the door and go in, and you start thinking, when I came last night, where did I keep it? Not in the usual place. Then you look for that in the usual place. If it is not there, then you start searching. Where could it be? Where at all I went yesterday onward? Where I could have kept it? Then your wife says, you always forget this. You keep it next to your shoe stand. Now you know where it is. Then you go there, and there are so many things there. So you leave all the things unwanted and look for the key alone. Right? Not that other things are not important for you at all in your life. At this moment, that's not. In the same way, once you know where the happiness is, all other things become unimportant. This is the most important step in the person's life. If you say that also I want, and happiness also I need, the one creating bondage also I need, and one creating the everlasting happiness also I need, then you are not really looking for it. So searching is for where to find, seeking is to look exactly at that. That's exactly what I want. So a student typically who has seen the world, and during those times they had a lot of rituals to invoke gods or ask for forgiveness, or ask for more and more luxuries in life to solve the problems of life. They were invoking the grace of God most of the time. And this is where the rituals came into being. The thinking, living being always thought that if somebody has created this own universe, he or she must have the solutions for our problems as well. And therefore they started to pray, to glorify, and that's where the rituals came into being. And through rituals, they were able to invoke the presence of God or the grace of God. But then the problem is that it is temporary. So, Guru is necessary to provide answers for the searching student. The student who comes to a typical teacher, a spiritual teacher, would ask the same question: where do I find my happiness? What is bondage? What is liberation? And why am I now stuck here? Why am I confused? Why am I subject to anger, lust, passion, greed, jealousy? Why am I'm intolerant? And all these questions have to be answered. Without that, the student would not be convinced that there is a solution. So the conversation between a teacher and the student is what makes the Upanishads. Guru and the students engage in deep conversation in which students' doubts, apprehensions, and confusions are dispelled. So you'll find in all the Upanishads, including Bhagavad Gita, which is also considered as an Upanishad by the scholars and great masters, and the teacher and the student. In Gita, in Bhagavad Gita, it is Krishna himself, the avatar of the Lord, and the student who is confused in the battlefield, the conversation took place. But usually in a Upanishadic setup, it's not in a marketplace or in a place of action, it's a place of solitude, like what you are here. A place where you can spend a lot of time in meditation, contemplation, and studying yourself, seeking answers within yourself. So the conversation is what makes the Upanishad so interesting, because the student is already well matured person. He recognizes that all actions that we do, any action that I do, must have a limited result. No action can give me unlimited result. So he realized that by doing something, I cannot be free. I have to think correctly. I have to understand something very clearly. And my unhappiness is due to confusions in my mind. So therefore, Guru uses the scriptures to engage the students in systematic thinking. It's not that Guru does not have the answer, but to teach properly, to make the student go systematically in his thinking, the teacher uses the scriptures to explain this to him. Once the study is complete, the guidance from the Guru is only to inspire the student to undertake the journey toward happiness or liberation. So therefore, Upanishad insists on listening, reflection, and meditation as the means to liberation. First thing, you have to listen, and then think about what you have learned, and then move on to the next stage of meditation. Now, for example, what is this? Who said that? Who? Who said it? No, I don't interrogate you. Please do. Yeah? Somebody said, yeah. You? How do you know?
Because it's an experience I've had.
Oh, who said it's a bottle?
Who says it's a bottle? Manufacturer.
No, but when did you know that it's a bottle?
Somebody told me.
Exactly. Knowledge starts from listening. As a child, you have to start listening. Everything that you learned in your life is by listening to someone whom you trusted. Right? If somebody on the road said something, you might not have cared about it, but your parents or your mother or a father or a teacher, who you respected, who you think is telling you the right thing. That's why it said, Shraddhavan labate jnanam. One who has faith gains knowledge. Somebody told you this, otherwise you would not know. So now, this is easy thing. I mean, I see an object, yes, I know because somebody told me. But if I say there is God, there is something called heavens, do you believe? Depends upon who is saying. Right? Somebody whom you love, somebody whom you respect, if that person says, you may probably believe. We do believe in science because we believe that science is telling us something which is useful to us. But in the case of religion, when they say something, most people just take it for granted and never question it. An Upanishad student is not like such kind of a person. Even if the Guru says that there is something called higher happiness or lasting happiness, everlasting eternal happiness, he would ask, prove it to me. How is that? So the teacher cannot demonstrate it as an external thing because it's not an object. It is something which you have to find out yourself. Therefore, he will say, I'll give you guidance how to think about it. And more importantly, what not to think. What is that you have to discard? What do you have to let go? What your mind is unnecessarily occupied with, you have to let go of that. And think about things that I tell you. So that's where the reflection starts. Then once the student is convinced and he is able to reflect on what is said by the teacher, his mind becomes relatively calm and quiet and peaceful, and he is ready at that point for the next stage called dhyanam or meditation. So there's an intermediate, there is a connection between what you listen and what you meditate. Without being convinced about what you heard and understood correctly and reduced your thoughts about anything else around, you will not go into the state of meditation. So this listening called Shravanam in Sanskrit, and reflection called Mananam, and meditation known as Nidhyasanam. These are considered to be the most important part, three-part program, or 3 steps one has to take for finding or discovering the highest happiness. So here is a simple chart where you can see, in the case of a raw student who is approaching a guru, he is filled with his own pride and ego. I am so and so, I know. Whatever you have learned in your school, whatever you learned in your university, you're full of it. I know this. I know what I want. And I have learned so many things in my life. So I have made myself somebody in my life. Probably I learned some money. I earned some money and I am known for something. My skill set is this, my knowledge is this. So we are all filled with some amount of pride about ourselves. So also the student who reaches his teacher is full of something. So, but when he is seeking for happiness, the teacher says, leave aside all that you know already. Keep it aside. That's not necessary. You may be a great person, you may have a lot of wealth, you may have learned so many skills in this world, but that's not useful here. Here what you need to learn is something which is unknown, unseen, imperceptible, not an object. Therefore, you need to let go of all your thoughts about things that you already know and listen to what I am going to say. Because you have come here to know what is the highest happiness that I can gain in this world. So, the beginning of the teaching begins with listening to scriptures. Now, here is where the important concept called vasanas come in. The way we behave is mostly dictated by what we have experienced in the past. If you believe in the previous birth, from then on, from the many different births onward, we have learned or have got certain impressions of our life. As even I would ask you this question when tomorrow morning, when you get up, what do you do on a normal daily life? Not here. In the ashram, you have certain things, set of things to do. But when you are going back to your place where you are living, so you have, every morning you have certain things that you have decided to do as a routine. Not only the work related, but your lifestyle. What you want to eat, what you want to drink, the kind of vacation you want to go, the kind of people you want to hang with, kind of entertainment that you would like to have, like kind of books that you want to read, kind of food that you want to eat. All that these things are considered as deep impressions in your life which you have gathered over many years in this life itself. And Hinduism also believes that you also gathered certain momentum of such thinking over many lives. This is called vasana or deep impressions. And when we are filled with these deep impressions, we have less understanding or less recognition of our inner divinity. The God, which is, if you want to call it as God, the very state of happiness, the very state of fullness, the very state of bliss is still within us. But because we are so preoccupied with or filled with so much of busy with what we have got as an impression, we are not able to get time to look into this. That's why when you come to places like this to learn yoga or do certain things, you find, Swamiji, this place is so peaceful, so happy. It's not that the Swamis here are putting some happiness on your head every day. It is your own happiness you are able to experience in the mind is relatively quiet. Your usual vasanas, tendencies are not expressed right now. So when we realize that the deep impressions that I have got over many lives or in this life itself is occupying my life so much, and therefore I am unable to go deep within myself where the real peace is. When you start listening, how to overcome this past habits, past tendencies, deep impressions, the scriptures are to direct you towards that. How to overcome the intense pressure of the vasanas. And the teacher helps you to slowly quieten down, saying that inquire upon all these things. Think about it. If you want real happiness, then you have to keep the other things aside. That's where the japa and other things are very helpful, including your yoga and many other things are helpful for you to quieten the mind so that the inner divinity and peace is, at least a glimpse of it you can come to experience. Once you get a glimpse of it, then you start working towards that. I want this more and more. If I have not got an experience at all, and then if you are not able to even have a glimpse of it, then obviously no seeking will take place. You would not look for it. So the teacher asks the student to reflect upon the higher nature of oneself. And that is what the reflection on the self. And then, now the reverse takes place. Earlier the vasanas are more, divinity is less. Now the divinity experience is more and vasanas are less and less. Further, when he goes to the state of contemplation, he comes to have a greater presence of inner divinity, and through meditation he reaches the state of complete oneness or complete fullness and complete merging into that inner bliss and peace. Thereafter, such a person, when he comes to work in the world, he works out of that joy, the peace, the bliss. That's what the saints were and saints are. They don't demand anything from the world, but only to give that peace which they have already found out within themselves. Only to teach everybody, you are also that only. You also have it. It's not something special I am. I have chosen to walk on the path, and you can also choose to walk on the same path. So this is where the Upanishads comes into picture, where it gives you the correct beginning, understanding, Shravana, listening, gives you guidance to think, and gives you the pointers to meditation. And thus the student goes through the steps and then reaches the highest. So divinity that is unknown is introduced, attempts to intellectually understand the divinity, and thoughts about the divine divinity without egoistic assertions, and finally exclusive focus on the divine self, and then individual is completed his journey, realization of the non-dual self. This is the methodology of the Upanishads. And there are many Upanishads were found. It is, scholars have accounted for 108 Upanishads so far. Some of them were, during the aggressions of the invaders, etc., it's got burnt and lost. But the available resources say there are 108 important Upanishads documents available. So, in one of the verses in Sanskrit, there is reflection is 100 times superior to listening, meditation is 100 times superior to reflection. The final complete nirvikalpa samadhi, total absorption, is infinitely superior. Now, the question is, to start with, the Swami Chinmayananda, the master who's, as I said, the Guru by Vishnudevananda, in his commentary on Vivek Chudamani, he said, is there a man who, having somehow gained a human body, masculine temperament, and so complete knowledge of the scriptures, is foolish enough not to strive hard for liberation? He verily commits suicide, clinging to unreal things. To live in a routine will never yield the secret of living in inspiration. To get habituated to any method is to get into a rut and mark of all progress. We must have the freedom at every moment to change our pattern of living and seek new methods of keeping the mind and intellect occupied in a lively warmth of love and cheer. No routine life is going to give you a new result. You have come to learn the methods of doing yoga, etc. And that's definitely is going to change your way of living. If you say that I will do what I have been doing, but else also I want progress, it'll never happen. All progress happens when you start doing something different from what you have been doing before. That's why it's called practice. What's the difference between practice and habit? Habit, you do a thing continuously without thinking about improving. Practice is when you do every time you do it differently, progressively. Right? So you practice yoga, don't make a habit of yoga. Practice meditation, don't become habituated to meditation. You can have a habit of drinking coffee, but don't say I'm having a practice of drinking coffee. That's not, you are not practicing it. That's why the medical professionals, they practice medicine on us. Because what works, it doesn't work, they don't know. Well, let us give and see what happens. Even lawyers practice law on us. So practice is where you consciously think about improving it every time you do it. Where habit is mindlessly doing the same thing over and over and again. It will never improve. So now let's look at a simple distinction between these three. Swami Ishwarananda said that in the beginning of this human existence, the human beings were looking at the entire creation with a mind which is just gazing at things. It was not having that ability to understand what it is. Like a child, if you look at it, a small child which is few months old, how does it look at you, or anything? Just blank. No thought process goes on, apparently, just looking at it. That's how human beings started to gaze at the whole universe. Then came the state where the human beings started to observe things. Why is it raining? Why it rains sometimes and why it is not? Why is it winter? Why is it summer? Why trees shed their leaves in the winter and why should they come up with such beautiful leaves and flowers during spring? What happens then? What makes the rain? Why sky is blue? All sort of different questions were raised by the human mind, and therefore that's called age of observation. This is when the science began to develop. The relationship between cause and effect, as I was talking to you about. Then came the stage of scientific inquiry. They started to divide the world into various parts. Materials and procedure and hypothesis and conclusions and statements. That's where the past century has been, the past few decades of human existence has been. In the past 100, 300 years, we have been in the scientific inquiry situation. But the age has come today, now, is called the age of contemplation, where we have achieved to a certain extent the human comforts and conveniences. There are some more things to do, but the change has been very significantly taking place in the past few decades. Past 10 years or 20 years now. People have started to look for the spiritual answers, which was the case of all the great masters in the past. They have already given it to us, what is there to be thought about. But we kept it aside for a long time because we were so interested in science. So the human beings are looking back at the great masters and say, what did they think at that time? How did they reach the peace? Is it available even right now for us? So there are greater momentum towards spiritual inquiry and like yoga and meditation, and now we are going into the Ayurveda and other things, going back to the original observations of great masters, asking how the health was before all this new wave of things happened, how the simple living and closer to the nature will give us greater peace than all artificial things that we have been doing. So the age of contemplation is when the human mind reaches its acme or its highest point. So the science, no doubt, has given us certain answers to why everything is happening or what is happening around us. And the religion is always about attributing everything to God. But spirituality is where, what is my role in this whole thing? How is I am related to this highest divinity? So if you look at that, the intellect has been the questioner here. At that time of age of gazing, there is no science or religion, only a wonder. Later on, religions begin with superstitions, while the science began with cause and effect. And intellect has become curious, and then it is divided and understood the procedures, etc., and followed for technology to develop. Now, it is now entering into the spirituality with wonder. Now, it is accepted the world. It's not anymore questioning it, but accepting the world as a place for not anymore trying to find out how to destroy the nature, but how live with the nature and find our role in this. So the rituals were developed as part of the religions. In most of the religions, they have a lot of rituals, and most people are involved only in that. So why rituals? Intelligent redirection of physical and mental energy in the worship and prayer, keeping higher power as a guiding force in daily life, dedicating actions to God in love, praising God for the grace received, human goals called the righteousness, wealth, and pleasure and liberation, seeking God's help in accomplishing human goals, seeking forgiveness from God to avoid results of sin, finding ways to gain the merits and to obtain to heaven. These are the things which religion is able to give to us. While spirituality is about questioning it. What is the purpose of life? What happens at death? What is beyond death? Who created the world? Who is God? How to know God? What is soul? Is soul and God related? Can the soul be liberated? How? Individual efforts versus God's grace. States of liberation. If you look at it, all this, the difference between these two is rituals and religion say what you need to do, whereas spirituality is one asking why. And that's why when your children also ask the why question, you don't like it. Huh? Why are you asking so many questions? Because the child is curious. Why do I follow what you say? And when religious masters, you ask this question, why do you have to follow what you say? They don't like it. They said, you're irreligious, you're asking questions, you're a devil. No, but the Upanishads are about asking questions. You have to ask questions. Because without asking questions, we do not want to blindly follow anything. If you are just believing, you will be leaving. Because when you do not get what you want, you will not follow anymore. So most people leave religions, from one religion to another religion, they keep changing because they didn't get what they want in that religion, in that customs, in that ritual, in that system of thinking, in the system of following certain mechanical rituals and procedures. So Upanishad does not belong to any religion per se. It's about how to find the greatest joy in your life. So you will find in Upanishad no mention of the well-known so-called gods of Hinduism. You will not find the mention about Ram or Krishna or Hanumanji or Devi, none of those. Why? Because it does not belong to a religion. It's about what a human being is and what is the state that you would like to reach, the final happiness. And anyone who belongs to any religion, any region of the world, any belief system is capable of plunging into this inquiry and finding the truth. So usually the Upanishadic teachings begin with a student whose name is not known, reaching a teacher whose name is not known, entering into conversation. Some places we find the name of the teacher and the name of the students. For example, Kena Upanishad, if you take one of the famous, the teacher's name is also not there, the student name is also not there, but a lot of questioning takes place there. You take Ishavasya Upanishad, there is no teacher's name. There's no student's name. It's only conversation. In Mandukya Upanishad, the teacher's name is not there. Student's name is not there. So we find that it's an open inquiry. Anyone can ask the question and the teacher is expected to answer. And we will find in some of the Upanishads, like Prashna Upanishad, one of the famous ones, the teacher says, if I know, I'll tell you. If I don't know, please don't ask me any further. Because he's very clear about it. Whatever, how much I know, how much ever I know, I'll definitely share with you. Anyway, so the difference between the religious rituals versus the scientific, inquiry done by a Upanishad teacher on the student is so far apart. And religion forces you to think in a certain ways, whereas spirituality advocated by the Upanishad is an open-ended suggestions. You can do it. If you really want to think about it, these are the ways to think about it. Now, here also again, I would make the distinction. Rituals, basically rites and ceremonies which are physical activities. Worship and prayer is more on the emotional side, and contemplation and meditation is the intellectual side. The religion itself, as Hindu religion has it, as a philosophical section, which is about spiritual values and not any ritual or a worship or prayer or any kind of a thing that you need to follow everyday life, but it's more about thinking and developing and cultivating certain values, which will help you to meditate better for reducing thoughts, reducing mental agitations are important. So they gave 3 important values to practice. One is moderation in senses. Second is being non-violent, not hurting anyone by word, speech or action. And third one is being truthful to you, to be honest to yourself. These 3 are considered as the 3 important pillars of Upanishadic culture. Like any building is built on certain pillars, the Upanishadic teaching is built on these 3. That the student must have not denial of the senses, moderation. Not to deprive of your senses, but be careful how much you give to it. That's why we see that in religion, it's on the extreme. They go for fasting for so many days and then torture the physical body. Don't give food to the body. And intense, living in certain in a heavy heat or standing in front of the fire or, depriving the basic necessities of life. Because religion believes that if I torture my body and show my intense seeking for God, God will appear and tell me, give me something. This is the belief there. Whereas Upanishadic master says, after all, the divinity and joy and peace that you are seeking is inside you. Why are you torturing this body? What did he do to you? It's a vehicle. It's a vehicle that you have to carry on. And to keep the vehicle strong, healthy, useful, productive, active. And because when the body is healthy and active, the mind has the same ability to move on healthily, actively, intelligently, quietly. If you are torturing the physical body, the first thing which will disturb is your mind. Mind will not have the enough energy to think about or to contemplate or to sit quietly. It will be worried about the physical pain. So, self-control is, even though advocated by the Upanishads, but they talk about how to moderate your senses. Not to indulge too much, not to deprive too much. Not to sleep too much, not to sleep at all. Not to work too much, not at all work. So that middle path is what is suggested by the Upanishads. So also, non-violence. Understand the divinity that you are seeking, the joy that you are seeking is in you, and as much as it's in you, it's in other as well. That God, if you call it as God, God that is living in your heart is the same the Lord who is living in somebody else's heart too. As much as you feel not to be hurt by anybody else, so also you should not to others. As much as you seek respect and love for everyone, others also seeking the same thing. As much as you want to be known and understood, so also as others. So therefore don't hurt anybody. by word, speech, or action. That is called ahimsa, the non-violence. Last but not the least is what you are seeking, you must be utterly honest to that. Don't fool yourself. What you want, you must be absolutely truthful to that. If you are not truthful to yourself, then the whole journey will be useless. If you are cheating yourself, who will correct it? If you're cheating somebody else, you may win something, but you cannot cheat yourself. So truthfulness is considered as another important pillar of this Upanishadic learning. Now, to give a small idea about that, so brahmacharya is self-control, moderation in food and activities and sleep, not getting carried away by excitement and disappointment, reveling in contemplation on Brahman, the absolute reality. That is considered as brahmacharya or self-control. Ahimsa, non-violence, not hurting by anyone by speech, polite and gentle behavior, no revengefulness even when wrongly treated, not reacting to results of past actions, total surrender. Satyam, or truthfulness, abiding in the self, not gossiping, speaking only what is true with love, dwelling only in thoughts that are noble. These three are considered as Upanishadic pillars, and that's important for the student to follow. Indulgence is weakness, denial is fear, moderation is freedom. Violence is expression of intolerance, non-violence is expression of patience. False needs support of truth. Truth is its own support. Truthfulness is independence. So these ideas are given to the student to follow, but by explaining to him why it is necessary. Now, this comes to a very important discussion in Upanishads. We live at three levels of reality. Let me explain to you a little in detail so that you understand what's coming up later. Now, you see me, you hear me, yes? I'm seeing you, and I see that you are hearing, most of you. So now, this is what is referred in Upanishad as transactional reality. In this transactional reality, we come across things, and I see a thing, and you also see the same thing. If I say, this color of this is what? Maroon? You also see the same thing, I also see the same thing. So there is no doubt about this. I experience this color as maroon, and you are also seeing the same color. So, more often than not, we all believe that this alone is the reality. Because everybody accepts it. It's called pratyaksha. Pratyaksha means it's direct perception. I also see the same thing which you also see. I experience the same thing, more or less you also experience the same thing. If it is raining outside, I experience the rain, you also experience the rain. And if it is too hot, I also sweat and you also do that. So there is no doubt about this, whether it's real or not. Most science believes on this, and this alone is reality for the science. They say seeing is believing. Okay, keep it aside. So that's called transactional reality. Now, Upanishads talk about the absolute reality. Absolute reality is where your absolute happiness is also. And anything absolute, please pay attention, anything absolute must be abstract. Think. If I have the white chart, blank white board is there. If I put a point there with the pen and ask you what is the value of that point, what's your answer? Your answer would be, what is the x and y axis? If that is x and this is y, the point is x1x, x1 and x2, x1, y1, right? Because the point has a value. Based upon what? Based upon its relative position. Right? But when it comes to absolute happiness, it cannot be related to anything. If it is related to something and that support gone, it will also disappear. So Upanishads talks about supreme happiness called Ananda. The word Ananda, which most of the Swamis have the last name. I am called Ishwarananda, and there is Brahmananda. Huh? Prema Swarupa Anand. Shambhudeva Anand. What is that Anand means? We are supposed to be happy. And happy without reason. That's the point here. We should be happy without any reason. If you have a reason to be happy, then you are relative happiness. It depends upon something happening or something not happening. So, the Upanishad points out absolute happiness is the nature of God, or that's what God is. So that absolute happiness is what one is actually seeking. A spiritual seeker looking for absolute happiness. And absolute, as I said, cannot be depending upon anything. Therefore, it has to be abstract. Since it is abstract, it's difficult for the teacher to show or demonstrate to the student. Even though the teacher is reveling in that joy which he has already found out, he cannot pass it on to him. The student has to be guided to reach by himself. Then the student would ask, if I am also, by really speaking, I am also of the nature of absolute happiness, which is what God, who is sitting in everybody's heart, is, why am I not there? What is stopping me? Is the world a problem? Is the arrangement of the world is a problem? Is where I am living or how I am living is the problem? Why God created the problem then? So here the teacher answers, neither the world is a problem, or the arrangement of the world is a problem, or the objects and beings are the problem. The problem is the third aspect of the reality called perceptual reality. This perceptual reality is the actual problem. For example, if I have a flower in front of me, and when I look at the flower, and the flower reminds me about my girlfriend, whom I gave the same flower some years back, and she threw that thing against me, saying that you are a cheater, you're useless, and you did this, you did that. And so whenever I see the flower, I remember that situation. So whenever I see the flower, I am unhappy. Now tell me, is that flower created that unhappiness?
No.
The flower did not create any unhappiness as it is. It is my perception of the flower, my experience which I had in the past about the flower or related to the flower is what is making me unhappy by looking at the flower. This, I'm just giving a simple example. So also, when we see things around us, we are constantly working on our own impressions of those things. If you see a person who remotely looks like a person whom you don't like, you stop liking that person also. Why? Because he reminds me of that guy. This is called perceptual reality. And most of us live in this perceptual reality. And that's where our unhappiness, that's where our anger, that's where our jealousy and intolerance and everything, and all the religious fanaticism, all these religious intolerances, all the racism, everything comes from this perceptual reality. I don't like the person looking different in color, or I don't like a person following different belief system. I don't like those people who do not believe the God I love or I believe, or I don't like the people who speak some other language. This is where the perceptual reality takes over. So Upanishad says, if you want to really liberate yourself, don't shun the world. Don't shut the world. Don't hate the world, but recognize that your bondage is due to perceptual reality which you created yourself, which you live by, which you live to experience. Let me give another example. Time is up. No? 5 more minutes. Okay. You all have been dreaming every day, right? Can you decide what you dream about? Do you decide that? Today I am going to dream about this. Do you decide and do it? Then if you decide and dream, that's not dream anymore. But it happens invariably when you wake up next morning. If I ask you what kind of a dream you had, oh, it was a nice dream, or you say this is such a painful dream, Swamiji. I'm so unhappy that such an experience I had. But after some time, an hour or so, it's gone. Why? Because you know it is not true. You had that experience, but you don't keep lingering or thinking about it. Why? Because you know it is just a creation of the mind. It is just a dwelling of the mind. It is just a dissatisfied mind, it experienced it. Just like you wake up next morning and have a memory of that experience, but not you live by that experience forever. In the same way, Upanishad says that every experience should be evaluated as perceptual only. It may be bad, it may be good, it may be pleasant or unpleasant. Don't give too much importance to that. The moment you give importance to that, your perceptual reality will take over you, and thereafter you will live with prejudices. You hate certain things, you love certain things, you want to own certain things, you want to give up certain things. You have strong likes and dislikes. This is where the vasanas get built up. This is where your life becomes very busy. This is where you constantly dwell upon running away from things that you don't like and running towards things that you are giving little pleasures. So the teacher is giving us the three levels of reality. The transactional reality, the word, which is not really of any disturbance to you. It's just arrangement of things as it's created. And the absolute reality is what God is. The nature of the Lord is absolute happiness. But what makes us not move away from transactional reality to absolute is because we are living in the in-between zone called perceptual reality. And that's what is to be overcome by listening, by reflection and meditation. We'll see more of it in the next session. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah Sarve Santu Niramayah Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhaved. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om.